Welcome back, fellow armchair generals. This is Gamer 1745 here with my continuing playthrough of Kaiserreich, and of course we're playing as Germany. Okay, the 5th Anglo-Afghani War has started. After the Welter Craig, the British Raj collapsed into turmoil. Warfare in the neighboring kingdom of Afghanistan took advantage of this as an opportunity to seize Peshawar and Quetta, both border regions. However, the Afghani government attempts to modernize over the last decades have been met with fierce resistance. The conservative elements within the country, the King Abdullah Khan, now hopes to use the turmoil in Delhi to, following the death of George V, to his advantage by repeating the success of the 4th Anglo-Afghani War. Now, one thing about Afghanistan. Afghanistan is dictated by its geography. Hey, British Telecom, good to see you there. Siberian Division, useful. Django, I don't know what you're talking about specific. Be a little more specific. Well, hopefully I don't know if that's a good thing or bad thing. Sound like I'm in the news. But Afghanistan is defined by its geography. Partially, it's poor geography, meaning poor for human use. Lack of natural resources or reasons for people to want to conquer it. But also because of its such rugged and hard to move around geography, as it says, the king is trying to modernize. Well, you can modernize Kabul. It's a pretty big city, pretty big open area. And you can do that, as well as Kandahar and Herat up here and some of the other places in Afghanistan. And yes, I know the geography more than most people of Afghanistan. You can modernize those things, but to get past the city, to get out into the countryside, it's just because it is so cut off, so tribal. And it would be tribal, and I can knock tribalism, but as you know from my logos, I'm into my Scottish heritage. We're into tribalism. We're into mountainous, the Highlanders, mountainous regions, and identifying by ourselves. So the mere fact that it's tribal is not necessarily a bad thing. It's sort of regressive and lacking of central authority and other things. So that sort of defines what Afghanistan is to this day. Now they've gotten out all this extra territory, which yeah, a good chunk of that is still the sort of what a Northwest Territory that is still rather tribal to this day in Pakistan. And it is, firearms are legal there. Most of Pakistan, it is like a death sentence or some sort of situation if you have firearms. They're extremely banned. But up in this part of the region, it is still perfectly legal to buy, sell, and manufacture firearms. In Peshawar, there is a localized firearm industry in which they make hand-make firearms still to this day. My granddad went there back in the late 70s, early 80s, and found it very interesting. Almost brought me back a little pen gun, a gun that looked like a ballpoint pen that fired 22 caliber bullets, just a single one. He didn't, mainly because he didn't know what my parents' reaction would be, giving me at, I don't know, 10 years old or 12 years old or something, giving me a firearm. But he almost smuggled one out for me. Figured that he could do that. That's how much the world has changed. So we don't care about Afghanistan. I think we're going to remain a authoritarian democracy is my current plan. Okay. Black Week comes to an. Now, I haven't done another national focus because I was waiting for this. The situation hardly improved in the days following Black Monday, which was the start of what became known as Black Week. Panic selling of stocks reached an all-time high as people tried to dump their stocks before they became worthless. When the Berlin stock market closed at the end of the week, the market was dead as the 11 major economic experts and top executives in Germany had committed suicide. The government had to act. Okay, we must reform the economy now. So, Well, we're going to start that. Dig our way out of this hole. Okay. Habstract terrorizes the cities. With the devastating economic situation, many families struggling to earn their daily bread, and social security net is strained beyond the breaking point. That means it broke. Now, the last weeks, the streets of many German cities have been increasingly terrorized by gangs of teenagers. These Habstract steal products from the markets, shops, and often money from innocent pedestrians, commit acts of vandalism, and escape boredom and frustration. More and more citizens do not feel safe anymore in the streets. Okay, we're going down this. Financial troubles in the colonies. Rising inflation and consequently debased Reichsmark. Now, this is something that I have a little bit of a problem with. This is, they talk about rising inflation and debasing of the Reichsmark. I don't, okay, you know, I can say I'm not an economist, and I'm not an economist. I've had economy courses, and as you know, I study things. I don't see a reason for inflation here, because inflation happened in Germany because Germany had, you know, the Weimar Republic I'm talking about, had reasonably justifiable war reparations to give. Yes, I know we may have Germans watching this channel or this thing, but when Austria goes to war with Serbia, when Russia decides to protect its Serb allies, and the German Empire decides to agree to support its Austro-Hungarian allies against Russia, knowing that Russia does have a defense agreement with France, but Russia did attack Austria, and Germany just coming to its aid doesn't necessarily mean that France is going to come into the war, but may mean that France is going to come into the war. But Belgium isn't coming into the war. Belgium is going to stay out of the war. And so Germany invades Belgium, and it's only the invasion of Belgium, a state set up by Britain, does Britain get into the war. So Germany has blatantly expanded the war, in my opinion, for national defense, you know, no justifiable national defense reason, just because it was the Schlieffen Plan, and just because in the 18th century, generally speaking, you could march across other people's territories peacefully to get at a third party somewhere else. That wasn't what was going on in nation states, and so Germany, yeah, justifiably has to pay reparations. So they have to pay reparations, and then they can't afford it, so they borrow money from the United States to pay their reparations, and then they got to pay the United States reparations back. So that's what causes the inflation in Germany, where, as I was talking in the previous episode about Black Friday in the United States and the U.S. Depression, we actually had deflation in the United States during the Great Depression, not inflation, meaning that factories could produce things, but nobody had the money to buy them, so the people were willing to take pay cuts just to keep some sort of job, so they could lower the prices down, and resource manufacturers, miners, loggers, whatever, couldn't sell their resources to anybody because people weren't selling their finished products, so they were selling their resources cheaper because, hey, half a job, because they didn't have social security systems set up before FDR in the United States, so you didn't have unemployment insurance, you didn't have various programs, at least not on a national level. There were other schemes, but not on the national level, to deal with unemployment. So half a job is better than no job. So you had a deflationary situation. It is only because of untethering the money from, in which they may be untethering the money from gold or silver, but that may or may not be happening. But I don't see where inflation necessarily comes into this. I think they're channeling Weimar a little too much into the Kaiserreich. I'm going to pause here and look at the chat stream here. Okay, well, I'll look at that a little bit later. Oh, I can see some of the civil wars they're talking about. Yes, Britain does violate others' neutrality. That is true, but you see, you got to understand something. Britain won the war, and it can come down to just simply that. You can get away with a lot if you win the war. So you can also look at the idea that Britain was Greece's protector, because Britain also functionally set up Greece. Corfu was the only part of Greece never occupied by the Turks or any other Muslim areas, and for a while it voluntarily joined the British Empire. And so the Greeks in Corfu area are different than Greeks everywhere else. And Britain very much helped the Greeks get their independence from Turkey. So you can sort of say that there's sort of some protectivity there. Okay, rising inflation. Some maverick politicians propose raising taxes, but raising taxes on German nationals just to aid German colonials would obviously be not popular, especially not under the presence of economic situation. Most of the Reichstag merely proposed limited financial support for our colonial possessions, which would raise taxes. Well, that's just digging us way deep in a hole. Help. Well, both of these have. Well, we're gonna go the middle route. We're already deep enough, so we can afford to go. Excuse me, a little deeper. Yeah, you can look at that, but if you look at the 1920s, how many civil wars were there then? You have the German Civil War, the Spartacus uprising in, referring to some stuff on chat here, the Spartacus uprising in Berlin, the Nazi Ludendorff mixed sort of pseudo Bavarian independence outbreak that lasted a few hours of a war. You have, of course, the Russian Civil War. You have various Balkanite type wars that would become sort of civil. The Ottoman Empire kicking out the Greeks and that sort of wars. So you have a lot of sort of 1920s stuff that would, well, obviously the Russian Civil War. Okay, so we're in the Second Russian Civil War. This is different than my last playthrough. The Second Russian Civil War, a mere 20 years ago, the last years of the Walter Craig, the Russian Empire collapsed in turmoil, ripping apart between nationalist movements, the Whites and the Reds. After a German intervention, the Republican government defeated the Bolsheviks, but it appears that the Russian revolutionary spirit is not exhausted. After ineffective land reform by Kerensky government and the austerity measures to pay off Brest-Litovsk reparations, as well as the crisis in government after the president's assassination, the cities in the western part of the nation have been engulfed with the red tide once more. Will Bukharin's Soviet Russia prevail, or will the loyalists of the white government defeat the disasters a second time? That's an interesting development. Civil war in Russia. The crisis in Russia has reached frightening levels of intensity once more. Red and white forces are at war. We have seen the horrors of Bolshevism once before. Although our own workers may not like it, it is probably in our best interest to help the legitimate Russian government. We can send volunteers, manpower, which we don't have any, but okay. We can only spare some supplies. We cannot spare any. Well, how much? Well, let's send them the volunteers. Maybe there's negative. A little back on us, but hello, Boss Bear. How you doing? And thanks for following. I do appreciate that, Boss Bear. And the Night Reaver. Good to see you again. Okay, the Kenyatta Sof affair. An unusual case has reached the highest courts in the German state. Anti-colonial activist Jomo Kenyatta. It's sounding like, maybe it's somebody else, but it's sounding like one of the Rhodesian or somebody. No, maybe that's Tanzanian guy. The name sounds familiar to me. Okay. Has brought a class action suit against the former Afrikaan stadtholder himself. The case has become something of an embarrassment. As some of the plaintiffs are veterans of the Great War, it is not easily dismissed. They claim that Sof's administration harmed them through policies of illegal land seizures and event abdications and abductions, okay, and torture. It's maybe just badly written. All done with Sof's knowledge and little legal basis. Quietly, the Foreign Office has explained to the government that such things are common and necessary in our colonial administration. They are strongly urged to quash this motion. Okay. The court has no right to rule on Middle African affairs. What's the worst that could happen? Yeah, I think we're going to stay out of Middle Africa. I don't trust Goring. Goring was very much of a climber, as one would say, and climbers in and of themselves are not a bad thing, and that is sort of maybe coming out of English cultural viewpoint, meaning people that don't know their station are trying to climb out of it. Sorry about that. Climbing out of your social station isn't bad, but Goring, it seems, was very much willing to do it in a sort of a brutal way. Now, obviously, we see that ultimately with his involvement with the Nazis, and this may be post looking back at it, but he was not very popular when he took over the flying circus. Because you got to remember, Goring was a super popular with the masses ace after World War I. So, you know, I don't trust him. Of course, history shows that out to be a good thing, but even here within this Kaiserreich, I'm not trusting him. All of the Italian Federation mourns the death of His Holiness Pope Pius XI, who passed away in his sleep after having been in declining health for the past several years. The Holy Father will soon be interred with the rest of his predecessors in the tomb of the popes until the next pope can be chosen. The Italian Federation will be ruled by a college of cardinals in Rome. The succession of His Holiness is made all the more important due to the Catholic Church's role in the government of the nation, as well as the vehement opposition to syndicalism, a force which has divided Italy and created the Southern Breakaway Republic. How terrible. Yes, this Breakaway Republic. We're back to the Kingdom of Two Sicilies. Yes, we are going to maybe limit some of Goring's ambitions on some of that. I run into the Portugal situation where he wants to seize land, and I don't think we're going to let him do that. Remilitarization of Olentia. The Treaty of Bucharest of 1918 officially ended the Weltkrieg for Romania, but at a high cost. The nation was now dominated by the German and Austrian industries. Olentia was demilitarized, and the oil fields were leased to Germany up to the distant 2012. Humiliation of Romania resulted in its devolving into a nationalist populist dictatorship led by Conductor Cordenu and his Iron Guard, set up to restore the Romanian what it says it should have been, a titan of the Balkans. The first major move conducted by the conductor is the remilitarization of Olentia, a strategic region in Wallachia with large oil reserves and military industry. The world is changing. Okay, agricultural crisis in Middle Europa. During this time of great crisis, the agricultural sector of Germany, of the German economy, is one of the most vulnerable. Sorry, man, I should learn to read this better. To turmoil. With this in mind, several Junkers representing the landed nobility of the Kingdom of Prussia have asked for protectionist legislation and subsidies to their production. By imposing tariffs on foreign produce, we will strengthen this important sector of the Reich's economy. Such a measure will likely cause further damage to the economy of our neighbors. However, as they are greatly dependent on trade with Germany, the wheat crops in Ukraine are particularly vulnerable. We must protect our own peasants, promise help. We're going to promise help because I don't want to lose my allies. I know we're going into chaos here, but if we can ride through the chaos, maybe we can come out on the end much stronger. Yeah, okay, I butcher English too. It's my Californian vernacular. Though generally speaking, most of the British people I met could understand me at least. Representatives from numerous syndicalist and socialist nations have gathered in Paris today in what might just be a defining moment in the history of the ideologies. The French Commune has invited numerous countries to the first official gathering of the members of the Third International to discuss political foreign matters and cooperation on the spreading of socialism further. The French opened the International with a powerful parade, festivities in Paris, and finally a speech by the chairman of the CSP. Topics like Spain, the United States, and the world economic crisis are at the top priority, and it is expected that France and Britain will take the initiative in the gathering. Okay, I want to say something here about this. Weltkrieg, is that better? Weltkrieg? One of the persons that is having, my opinion, and to some degree Kaiserreich has shown this to me, on the left, in Weltkrieg, on the left to this day, that is, I think, is overlooked. And I have a degree in political science. It comes from a California university. They weren't quite as crazy back then as the universities in California are today. I was an outspoken voice on the right. I knew literally the political science department head, had him as a teacher in multiple classes, got A's in his classes. He was a Latin American specialist, but I was, like I say, one of the 2 or 3 publicly acknowledged outspoken people on the right in the political science department, and I'm not saying I got an A in every class, but I got A's in many or most of them. I was well known by the students and disliked by many of them because I disrupted the course by asking questions that weren't on the test. Most of the students, even at that time, is this on the test? Do I need to know this to pass the course? No. So they got upset because they just wanted to be able to pass the damn course. They weren't interested in learning. Some of them were upset with my political views, most assuredly, but I was more unpopular for doing interesting discussions, as you can maybe tell. But I was not necessarily unpopular with my professors because I was well informed and could talk on the subjects and did very well. Like I say, to the point that my department head wrote, "Oh, yeah, you want to take a semester off from the course for academic credit to go study British history and politics? Sure, go ahead." Maybe that was partly just to get me out of their hair for a semester or so, but they were happy to sign off on things like that. So they knew who I was, and I have a strong background in politics. And yes, I would say all of my professors were at least socialists in the department, and I mean all of them. And I knew most of them in the department well enough to say that. I would be shocked and surprised if at the time there wasn't at least a socialist. The rest, not all of them were socialists, but they were at least socialists, if not communists or other sorts of things. But the most influential man on the left to this day is Joseph Stalin. I've come to understand this. More so than Marx, more so than Lenin. It is Stalin. Because Stalin's biggest enemies, the people that he hated the most, the people that he fought hardest against, wasn't the monarchists, wasn't the capitalists, it wasn't even the fascists, though those were big enemies too. It was other leftist elements. Now, the fascists can sort of be described as the left, but their big difference was as they believe in nationalism. You'll get to this in a minute. The biggest import of Stalin was doctrinaire agreement and the idea that you must toe the party line. You must be, because the internationals that were held in the Soviet Union very much were this. We weren't going to allow deviation from the party line, to the point that when Nazis hate communists, communists hate Nazis, they're the most hated people in the world. Oh, Hitler and Stalin just signed a joint treaty of friendship. Oh, yay! So the communists in France started supporting Nazis because they were allied with Joseph Stalin, so they must be good guys. Well, maybe they're not, but they're allied, so we're going to help support the Nazis because, over Poland. And there was a time, up until the German invasion of the Soviet Union, that the communists were very quiet in occupied France and other places because Stalin told them, or the party ruled by Stalin told them to be so. So they would stomp out syndicalism. They would stomp out radical anarchism. They would stomp out any sort of communist deviation from the Soviet party line. And this mentality is still, to this day, in the left. You don't have there is not a syndicalist party that holds an office, in my opinion, anywhere in the world. I would be shocked if there's even a town council member somewhere in Spain that I'm part of the syndicalist party. There's definitely zero syndicalism in the United States in any political thought. There is on on the left, as it's described, anarchism is just violence for violence sake to this day, because you're no longer, oh, the rulers are in palaces and the poor people are in slums, or actually starving. Not just, oh, we, get government assistance and live in, bad homes, but starving. Like you can look at the Austro-Hungarian Empire or something. So the anarchists want justice and are going to try to assassinate, like, Archduke Ferdinand, which those were sort of Serbian ultranationalists, but you get the point. So you no longer have that sort of, at least in most things. Yes, you're right to point out the Spanish Civil War. That is, Django, that is because of Stalin. They died out there because Stalin would send weaponry. The Soviet agents in the Spanish Republic decided who got the great bulk of the weaponry and the ammunition. Those were going to units that were Stalinist, loyalists, communists. The great bulk of it did. So if you were a Trotskyite communist, you didn't get weapons, or good weapons, or the new weapons. You didn't get the good stuff. And also during the Spanish Civil War, what they would do is they would send order, because they got commissars, and the commissars were appointed by the people who were giving the Republicans the weapons, the Soviets, and would order the anarchists or the syndicalists or the Trotskyite brigade to go take that hill. You're ordered to take that hill. What if you're not going to go charge up that hill? We're going to shoot you. So they go charge up the hill and die. And you can look at some of the books on the Spanish Civil War. I forget the author right now. I can look it up. Did some really good historical fiction. It's good writing, plus it's good history too. That's what good historical fiction is it puts a few fictional characters into history so that they can sort of tell the story that's the real history going around them. And so that they would send the other groups up to fight and die while they kept the Soviet good armed equipped units purely on the defensive and not do any of these crazy last-ditch defensive, hold this building or this university until the last person or we'll shoot you kind of thing. That's how they got rid of the anarchists, the syndicalists, the socialists, the other people. In my opinion, by the time you would have gotten done with the Spanish Civil War, it would have been a Soviet republic of one form or another. Right off without any reference, I don't know who Eric Blair is. But, so that is why I say one of the most influential men on the left is Stalin. Is that they, because what's sort of on the right, if you will, and unacceptable to the left in America is libertarianism, which is sort of rational anarchism. Well, I know who George Orwell is. Yeah. Oh, and I've recently come across a picture of him in Spain during the Civil War, because I know he was a socialist of some sort. In Spain in the Civil War with the writer, for whom the bell tolls. I'm talking about. Oh, Eric Blair is Orwell's full name. Okay, well, see. Oh, Hemingway. Yep, that's who I'm talking about. Hemingway, the writer. See, I mind blanked on some of these things. Picture of Orwell. They were both in the picture. Hemingway was in the background. I didn't know Orwell's real name was Eric Blair. Okay, and I have read some Orwell. And Orwell was definitely talking about the dangers of. I know Orwell was a socialist, but you can look at the Animal Farm to realize that he did understand some of the dangers of it. But this orthodoxy that was put on them, and like libertarianism, in my opinion, is rational anarchism, is a minimalist state with a fewest possible governmental controls, most freedom, practical, but still recognizing you need a police force. They got to, if there's a serial killer living next to you, you got to have a police force to arrest him. And, you know, you got to have somebody paying some taxes to afford some sort of army. And so rational people that are sort of want to be sort of minimalist, rational anarchists are libertarians. But libertarians are not accepted on the left in America because they deviate from the socialist big government pattern. Now, not all leftists today are Stalinist communists. That's definitely not the case. But they put this orthodoxy of a socialist viewpoint as opposed to syndicalists. Syndicalists, as I understand it, believe in communal owning of the means of production, but of a limited community, meaning the workers of one factory own that means of production. I don't know if they have to own it all equally, but they all own it. So to a point, it's stock ownership, maybe without being able to trade and without being unequal ownership. But that factory can compete against the factory in the next door, or the next province, or somewhere else. So there's still a market competition going on with syndicalism. I'm sure that they want free health care and other socialist type elements, but you have this market dynamic element that you don't have in socialism that has been crushed. The Road to Vegan Pure. I don't know that book. Let me see how little I know. So yeah, so that's why I say that Stalin, with his orthodoxy, is still the biggest impact on the left, and not Lenin, not Marx, because without Stalin, I don't think Marx would have as big an impact. Marx and Engels. The Reds are meeting to coordinate their activities, which are definitely aimed against order we have established in Europe following our victory in the, Weltkrieg. Gotta relearn these things. We must watch this meeting and analyze the results closely. Okay, well, we already have the results, or some of the results here in Moscow. We no longer get the effects of our pollings. Yes, thanks for that warning about France. And I did do this. I actually made, just go here. If this sounds like I've sort of done some of this before, I've actually made this episode and the previous one sort of before. I have 3 unreleased episodes of Kaiserreich, but when I found out, let's put you on the train. When I found out that supposedly by the 1st of the month, and they did do it, that they were going to be releasing a new Kaiserreich, I thought I better just wait for this version here. Okay. So you're right, I need to be prepared for a possible war, and I want to hold the Belgian line. Well, yeah, Lenin was the popular figurehead, but I really think it's the orthodoxy that Stalin not enforced within Russia, but enforced in the world generally. I don't know that Lenin would have done that. Maybe he would have. I see Stalin as such a bad guy. And I see him as a France shows its true face. The Reds are clearly set to spread their poison, as they clearly shown during the last session of the elections. We must be prepared for it. I see Stalin as a power-hungry madman who, shall we say, only incidentally, was a communist. And so he tried to remove all threats to his regime. He did not see the czars as a, they were dead, the main family was dead, but the czars as a threat to his regime. He did not see the British monarchy as a threat to his regime, because they weren't going to convince his regime to overthrow him. He saw deviations on the left as a threat to his regime, so that's what he put down. Yes, oh yes. Oh yeah, no. Lenin isn't a good guy. He's portrayed as a good guy nowadays, but he was not a good guy. I just really see that Stalin is the one that really sort of enforced it. Okay. Oswald Mosley, elected as chairman of the TUC in 1936, the trade union congress in the Union of Britain, has made out to be decisive. Longtime chairman of the TUC, Philip Snowden, declared his resignation, causing 4 major factions in the Union: Marxist, autonomist, federalist, and congregationalist, to butt heads over the position. As the dust settled, Oswald Mosley, leader of the Marxist and totalist ideologue, has been appointed as the new chairman. Mosley's faction supports a strong central government, full state control of the economy, and much more in favor of military action and British nationalism. Manufacturing, yes. You have to understand that Mosley was really a man of the left, though what you really do sort of see with the left, or with the fascist left, if you will, is a strong sense of nationalism that you don't see in traditional mainline socialism. So that is the big difference. I know that in modern America, Antifa, we're Antifa, we're only anti the fascists. Now we can call anybody who disagrees with us fascist, because hey, if you're anti the anti-fascist, you must be a fascist. Well, no, they're communist radicals who are using the name. But this is why you see in Germany, where National Socialism is more than just fascism, but it had the fascist economic system. And socialists see everything through an economic lens. If you watch my various Hearts of Iron series, you know that National Socialism is more than just nationalism or socialism. It is a race is ideology, race is religion. It is much more and beyond just an economic policy. So to call Nazis just and fascists the same, they're extremely not the same. But they have very similar, not the same, but very similar economic thing. So that the communist and the National Socialist in Germany were competing for the same sort of voter, the factory worker voter. They were the ones that were competing for each of them. Those traditionalists, either, they were voting for the nationalists, not the National Socialists. They were voting for somebody else. So that's why fascism and communism and socialism would conflict so much, because they're fighting over the same group of people for support. Our new colonial administration in Africa has seen gains in light industrialists using cheap and even forced labor for industrial production. This has significantly reduced the cost of manufacture and provided us with additional equipment. Okay, good. Which is probably bad colonial rule. Well, collectivist ideology, yeah, but you can go back to collectivism in the Middle Ages and stuff without the sort of socialism element going on. But well, authoritarianism, that's everything. You know, I mean, you can have democratic authoritarianism. You know, yeah, because you can have majority tyranny. You know, so authoritarianism is just sort of a catch-all, to some degree meaningless term that is based on authority and power. I can see that right, left, center. Okay, aftermath of Black Monday. Okay, so now we have this, which helped out a little bit with political power. That's 70 days, get 100 political power. Liquidate unprofitable estates. We remove some civil factories, which we don't really have very many. Bail out the Junkers, we'll lose even more political power. So I don't want to make either of those choices right now. Experimental research, I do want to do that, mostly to get to that, an extra research slot. Subsidies for Siemens, that's good, that's only 35 days. But we want to do, I think, imperial restructuring. It's going to be 7 days, but we'll get 100 political power, and there will be other different political gain elements. Yeah, we're planning on that, but I want to get out of the bailing out of the Junkers. I want to get out of this big political hole first. Then I want to bail them out. I think that's enough to hold my west wall, or whatever it's called, in Kaiserreich. Don't know what the Austrians are thinking I'm going to be threatening them with. I have no territorial ambitions against the Austrians, at least not at this time. If they decide to go against me on something, I'll fight them and take some territory. Okay, we can look at government. Authoritarianism is the idea that government is not ruled by the individual. Oh, you mean well, being a political science major, I see that as a bit more open. You're sort of saying authoritarianism is not the rights of the individual, I think, is more what you're saying. But yeah, okay, diplomacy. This is currently they are at war with the Soviet republics here. So that's what they're doing, details. I don't quite, I mean, obviously they lost this little pocket here, but that looked doomed anyways because you can't supply too much there. But I don't know whether this means who's winning or losing. Obviously the Russians aren't crushing the Soviets at this moment. I would say in some ways authoritarianism is rule without a means of redress for the people, or rule without accountability. Yeah, I'm not doubting the idea that Russia is looking like an enemy, but whether it's my emotional viewpoint, I just see Soviets as even more of that. Okay, Afghanistan and India have signed a peace deal. Hostility. Oh, it looks like India this time got back their lost territory. Sometimes I see them do a white peace. Okay, the Arab Congress. Planned by Arab nationalists in Egypt, the Arab Congress is an event in Cairo where delegates from all Arab nations convene to discuss the situation and preservation of the Arab culture and identity. Unfortunately, this is awkward and unwanted nationalism in our Arab-speaking provinces. Should keep an eye on this, and damn, it's another 25 points. Yeah, well, we're just down here. I know the Crete question is coming up, so let's increasing activity of the suffragette movement. Lately there have been rise in activity of the supporters of the women's suffrage. That is, those who want to grant women the right to vote and to run for office. In these troubled times of the German Empire, it is not easy to choose the best solution. Granting them what they ask would anger the more conservative elements in our government, especially the members of the Reichstag, currently elected by universal male suffrage. On the other hand, a stern refusal, followed by reprisals, may lead to riots and more protests, especially in the more liberal states that already permitted female voting in regional assemblies. Okay, a little bit about women's suffragettes and the modern political woman, shall we say. There's recently been, well, in the last elections in the United States, Madeleine Albright, a former U.S. Secretary of State, she said that there's a special place in hell. I didn't know that she believed in heaven and hell, but there's a special place in hell for women who don't support other women. Words very close to that. Recently, Michelle Obama stated that women don't, or women who voted for Trump were not voting in, or who didn't vote for Hillary, and who voted for Trump or whatever, were not voting in their special interests, or in their interests for voting for Hillary. Now, neither of these two women said similar things when they betrayed Hillary Clinton before and supported Barack Obama. You see how the left is selective on this, on women's issues. And traditionally, once women got the vote, they've often been more conservative than liberal, if you will, or more right than left. Once they got the vote, this doesn't hold true everywhere in all cases, but they, generally speaking, are that way. If you look at women, women are in most of the world. I'm not talking the U.S. or Western Europe, but in most of the world are the purveyors of culture to the young. Who promulgates Arabic fundamentalist culture? Who represses women? Women, when they teach their children. So just because you give women the vote doesn't mean that they're all going to be left or liberal. And they're very critical about that in their viewpoint. Also, another interesting fact, I forget their names, some of the major names in the British suffragette movement joined Mosley as part of the BFU, the British Union of Fascists. So it is not necessarily a leftist proposition giving women the vote. I don't know how Kaiserreich will handle this, but because we're supporting political power, promise to do something, do nothing. No, we're going to support this. I think we're in a deep enough place already. So once we take that as an issue off the table, yeah, okay, that's good to know. So we do this. Okay, I'm going to pause. We're going to end the episode here, but chat, don't go away. So to all you watching on YouTube, of course you could have joined me live or see this on YouTube if The next episode is yet to be released on YouTube. You can see it on Twitch, And I want to thank you all for watching. I want to thank you for liking the videos. I do appreciate that. If you haven't already, please subscribe to me. And of course, post questions, comments, suggestions, ideas. I love hearing from you. See you next time for more Arts and